Death is the unyielding truth that binds us all, an inevitable, profound, and deeply intimate encounter with the finite nature of life. It arrives without warning, shattering the world we thought we knew. In its wake, grief emerges, often dismissed as something to fix or get over. But what if grief, in its suffocating pain, is not a burden to carry or something from which we need to move on? What if grief is instead a sacred invitation, an opening to feel more deeply, to connect in unimaginable ways, and to transform all that we knew to be true? I'm Laura Walton, and I'm so grateful you're here. Together, let's step into the uncharted terrain of death and grief, not as something to fear or avoid, but as a force that shapes us, breaks us, and ultimately remakes us. Let's meet it not with resistance, but with curiosity and courage. And let's do this on purpose. Okay, welcome back to another episode today of Grief on Purpose, the podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Nikki Boyer. Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, Grief on Purpose, right? Yes, I'm here. We're going to do it. We're doing it together today. I'm so happy that you asked me to be on the show. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that you responded and said yes. Thank you.
Isn't the internet an amazing world?
Yes.
Sometimes right when I got on with you, I was like, oh, hi. Like, I feel like I know you. So there's this sense of us all knowing each other because we're collectively going through things together on social media, and then we get to connect. So as bad of a rap as social gets, sometimes I'm like, it connects us all. I know, but I'm really grateful for it because I would have never gotten to talk to you if we didn't have this device here.
I know. I say I hate it all the time, but there are a few positives that come from it.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So could you just give a brief introduction, Nikki, of who you are, how you think of yourself?
Oh gosh, isn't that funny when you have to think about yourself in that way? Currently, right now, I'm the executive producer of the TV show that's on Hulu called Dying for Sex. And I'm also the co-creator and producer of the original Wondery podcast that existed before the TV show. But before that, I was just a wandering soul that didn't have a clue as to what the F I was doing in the world. No, I'm originally from St. Louis, and I moved to LA to be a host and an actor. And I did a lot. I've been lucky enough to be on television and make a living doing this. But I think just recently I really found my stride in really deep, introspective, humorous storytelling. So that's who I am.
Okay. Well, I love it. And where do you live now?
So I am down in La Quinta, which is near Palm Springs. So moved from LA during COVID and moved down here. And now I basically live in a retirement community and act like I'm 90. So I love it.
That's kind of what I do too. I live in a much older community and I don't leave my house. So,
So we're in this together. Yeah, I get you. And it's lovely. But yeah, that's where I live now. And I'm also, other than it's funny when you say, what do you do and who are you? And you just list all of your sort of career stuff. I'm also, like a human in the world. I have a husband, I have stepchildren, I have a great family. So I'm really focusing right now on the friendships in my life, which is really a nice place to be. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Well, so yes, I don't know you. This is our first time meeting each other officially. Yeah. There's been some emails, but I can't even tell you how it happened for me, but I stumbled across the show Dying for Sex and I watched it and I loved it.
Thank you.
But I kept, so very quick side story for me is I do this work. I work with grief through the podcast and through other forms because I experienced the death of my father and a boyfriend at the time, both when I was in my 20s. And so those deaths just kind of rocked my world and changed the course of my life. So that's my brief backstory. And so in watching the show, I just kept wondering about you, and especially after at the end, after she dies, like there was, at least the way it was portrayed in the show, there was so much everything, for months, like they'll circled around Molly and circled around her illness and death and just this whole evolution of it. And then it stopped. And so So I was like, and then what? Like
Right, right.
how was the aftermath of that for you, the person who had seemed to be like one of the people who was most closely involved with it? So that was my initial
Yeah.
curiosity. And that's
Oh, I
why
love
I was like,
that.
oh, I want to talk to her and see if maybe she'll say yes. And so she did. And here we are. So,
I love
um,
that. I love the interest and curiosity of the aftermath, right? Because
yeah,
that's when the real grief begins. Because
yes.
when the death happens and the funeral or the ceremony occurs, and then honestly, the 2 months after that kind of feel blurry and like you don't even know who you are if you've showered, and then you kind of like start to regain who you are slightly. And I think that's where the real grief begins, which
Yeah.
is learning how to live without that portion of yourself, really.
Hmm.
Honestly, yeah. So,
Yeah. Yes.
I think
Yes.
my situation is really interesting because I have such a torch that I'm carrying for her that
Mhm.
I feel deep, deep grief, but in this very odd way, I feel so connected to her because I'm still working with her and
Yeah.
for her. And so I've never done that before. I mean, I lost my father and then you feel like you're connected to them still, but I wasn't telling my father's story. I think through telling Molly's story, it's really helped me with my grief. It's helped me figure out places to put it
Yeah.
and productive, right? So, yeah, it's been
Yes.
interesting.
I could see how that would be a part of that
Yeah.
process for you. Yeah. Just for anybody who maybe hasn't seen the show or doesn't know the story, can you give a brief kind of recap of what we're
Yeah.
talking about here?
Right, so it started off as a podcast, which was, physically myself and Molly, the real
Hmm.
person, recording and going over her life, which was inspired by her stage 4 terminal diagnosis that she received, leaving her husband of 15 years and going on a sexual journey and experiencing sexual escapades to kind of learn more about herself, get more intact with her body, have a little bit of fun, and also I think there's a much deeper meaning there. So that's how the podcast started with just us laughing about all the crazy sex stories that she had to share. Then in the middle of recording the podcast, we realized that her health was declining pretty quickly, and when she got into the hospital, we continued to record. So the television show that came from the podcast is kind of a merge of all of the information, the book that she wrote while she was dying. So it's a real story about female friendship. It's a story about cancer. It's a story about sex and finding how to love your body while it's failing you. It's a story about grief, and I think more than anything for Molly, it was a story about deeply falling in love with herself. So, if you're
Mhm.
interested in the story, it is an 8-episode series on Hulu, but there also is a podcast that is the actual real Molly, where the television show is depicted by Michelle Williams playing Molly and Jenny Slate playing myself, and they're both brilliant, and I'm so proud of them, and I feel like if you have it within you to lean into humor and grief, I would suggest really watching it and maybe going back and listening. It's kind of fun experience to do both of them. So anybody who has an extra 16 hours in their in their life, go ahead, go for it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you
Sure.
for the recap there. So how did the podcast evolve into the show?
Well, we had recorded all of these fun episodes. I think there were 10 total. These fun sort of like what's going on in your sex life while you're also in tandem dealing with cancer and doctor's appointments. I found that death and sex and illness was a really interesting combination. So originally it started as like she and I just saying like, what did you do last week? Who were you having sex with? Was it fun? What did you learn about yourself? Also, where are you in your cancer? And so it started off as that, and then
Mm.
she got really sick, and she ended up going into the hospital, and I said, "I really want these episodes to get out into the world before you pass away." So, in the 4 months that she was in the hospital dying, we were still working together and still talking about, like, how do we get this out into the world? And then I reached out to Wondery, which is the podcast company that I ended up working with, and I reached out, and they were very interested, and the CEO of the company actually came to the hospital and met
Wow.
Molly while she
Mm.
was dying, and it was really just beautiful and profound. So, Molly passed away, and then for the next 5 or 6 months, we worked on creating and crafting her story, and almost a year exactly to the date that she passed away, we released the podcast. So it went from like an adventure between she and I, and then it went to the podcast that Wondery created with me and my amazing producer, Stephanie Jens, who helped me really shape Molly's life into a 6 episode series. And then the TV show came from just the interest of networks and TV listening to the podcast and thinking that it was just a story that really deserved to be told. So it kind of just the ripple effect was kind of amazing. And I think it shows us that people are willing to go to those really uncomfortable places. And I loved
Mhm.
knowing that. I loved knowing that
Yeah.
people were ready for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that would be a really cool experience for you to have,
Yeah.
like, somebody wants to hear this story, you know?
Yeah. Somebody wants to hear
Yeah,
our tiny little lives, but also
yeah.
somebody's willing to meet themselves at that place within
Mhm,
themselves to watch this. And I just thought that was super cool.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very cool. So for you, it sounds like pretty immediately after Molly's death, you dove into the work of the
Yeah.
podcast and the evolution of that pretty quickly.
Yeah, and sometimes I wondered, like, is this getting in the way of my grief? Am I just
Mhm,
compartmentalizing my grief? Am I, like, putting a pause button on it? But believe me, it came out. But the way that it came out was like I think you'll get this. With every new version of her story that I was presented, so, for example, when I would get a rough cut of an episode or a script, I would have a new layer of grief because there was a version of letting go,
yeah,
right? Oh, just talking about it makes me
mm,
emotional. So every time I would watch or absorb something for the first time, I was a disaster for like 24 hours after. And then I could kind of put myself back together and go, okay, let's do the work. Let's get this done. But with every step of the way, there were new levels of grief, but it was always attached to like the art that we had recreated. And the when it was delivered to me, I knew I'd say to my husband, "Oh no, like episode 2, I'm gonna watch the rough cut tonight." And we would watch it, and then it would be like a deep, deep, deep grief that would come up. And that still continues to happen. Like with every step that I take along the way, it's celebration and excitement and joy. And then I carve that same amount within my heart for that kind of grief. So it's like they don't exist without each other. So I've learned that. But yeah,
yeah.
for at first I thought, "Oh, is this putting off my grief?" But no, I think it just helps me like figure out when to let it out, if that makes sense.
That's such a unique and cool way like, cool as much as something like this
No,
could
I
be
know what you
cool,
mean
but
though. No,
such a
yeah.
unique and cool way to get to experience the grief. I love that.
Never in my wildest dreams would I think that this was a way to do it. And I
Mm,
imagine that people that go through grief and then document it somehow, whether it's with a documentary or a podcast or a show. Like, I imagine this might be a similar path that they go through of just like, I don't look at it as like picking the scab off the wound because I don't feel like I don't want to deny the wound. I don't want the scab to grow. I want it because the wound is now part of me. I think it's a fabric of part of the fabric of who I am. So yeah, I think it's a pretty unique experience. I would actually love to talk to somebody else who's maybe, I don't know, gone through this.
Anybody else out there gone through this? We'll find them.
Yeah, exactly. Please help. Please
Yeah,
help.
please help. Yeah. Well, that kind of brings maybe an interesting question. Were there pieces of your experience that you felt maybe like you were doing wrong or you weren't like doing in the best possible way or anything like that came up that made you question how you were doing it? Grief.
Ooh. Yeah. I think I kept thinking to myself, like, am I avoiding this? Like, why am I not I mean, we're 6 years in, right? I've it's been she's been gone for 6 years, and I actually talk about her and think about her and deal with her, which would probably be her dream come true. She's like, "Oh, look, I'm the most important person in your whole life." But I talk about her more than I do really anyone else in my life, and so I think there was a little part of me, like, full disclosure, a little part of me that was like, is this normal? Am I being weird? Like, am I focusing too much on someone's death? But I think I came to terms with I'm 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 doing exactly what she wanted, which was take the hardest thing she's ever gone through, right? And give purpose to the pain and use it to help other people and to expose her story to other people that could hopefully crack them open and help them deal with their fear of death or their fear of grief. So, I think for a while I worried if I was like being overindulgent, you know? Like, am
Yeah.
I talking about this too much and doing too much with this? But then I very quickly learned that this really isn't about me. It's about her and how her story affects other people. So I kind of feel like I'm doing the good work in a weird way. Like I'm doing good work. So, but yeah, there was a moment where I was like, am I being gross? Like, where you're like, "Ew,
Yeah.
am I being gross?"
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
did worry about that a little bit.
Yeah. So this is
Yeah,
something she would have loved, it sounds like. The impact and the reach that her story has seems to have had.
so much so. She was a writer at heart, and she had a deep desire to tell stories, and I feel like she could never quite find the way to penetrate this market and this
Mm,
world. And she was always writing, always working on books, and I always, joke with her. I'm like, "You have the ultimate deadline. You're literally dying. You have to write your book." And she wrote her book before she died, and I think this is exactly how she would have wanted her death to unfold, if that makes
mm.
sense. Like, I think she
Yeah.
really wanted her death to mean something in terms of, like, helping other people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She would have
Mm,
loved this.
mm.
She would have. I think she is loving this. I feel her around all the time.
Do you? How do you feel her?
She shows up in my body, like, if I'm talking about her, I'll get, like, a vibration or a chill, like, through my body. Often when I'm talking like this on podcasts or shows, I ask her for guidance when there's something that I have to make a decision on, and I kind of ask her to find her way into my gut to tell me what to do. I feel her in my home. Her pictures are all around. She's on my piano, and I always talk to her in the middle of the day, so I feel just kind of her around. My Wi-Fi at my house is named after her. Like I just feel like she would always joke to me and say, I just wanna be the most important person in your life." And I was like, "Well, that is a tall order, my friend. Like, I have a husband. I love you." She's like, "No, I think we're soulmates." And I was like, "Okay, we're being slightly dramatic, but I think we might be soulmates." And then after she died, like, Laura, I felt her soul so close to mine. Like,
Mhm.
that's how I feel her. I just kind of feel her soul really very close to me. And
Yeah.
so my husband laughs and he's like, "Well, I think she's your soulmate because you don't get any more connected than the 2 of you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel her.
Do
And sometimes ladybugs, like I have a ladybug tattoo on the back of my neck.
Mhm.
And that's like my sign from her. She used to buy me ladybug stuff. Like she kind of overdid it, where it'd be like a ladybug birthday card, a ladybug pendant, a ladybug keychain, and I was like, "I'm not 4 years old, I don't need ladybug everything." But ladybugs show up in the weirdest of places, like, I was buying something at Michael's craft store the other day, and there was a ladybug on the countertop
Mm.
of a
Mm.
craft store. I was like,
Yeah.
that was aw I was like, "What?" And so, she
Mhm.
shows up like that for me too.
Yeah. I love those little
I know. Do you have those
synchronicities,
ever?
I
You
do
do. What
have
are
those.
yours?
Yeah. Well, a lot of mine happened closer to the times of the death. There was a lot of like electricity involved stuff. When my boyfriend at the time died, for months afterwards, like ever, like the light, wherever I went, it seemed like the lights would go out or the phone would ring and nobody would be there, or just, yeah, a lot of stuff involving electricity.
That's interesting.
Dogs would bark at nothing.
Oh,
This happened
wow.
so many times in those early days that it got to the point where like, before that, I didn't really believe much of that, but I was
Yeah.
like, I can't deny this. Like there has to be
Isn't that wild?
something going on. Yeah.
It's interesting because losing Molly, it was when I did lose her, there was such a moment of her communicating with me outside of her body to wake me up, to let me know that she was dying. Like
Mhm.
in the podcast, I talk about this story, but my hand was on the bottom of her leg and I was laying next to her sleeping. And I had gotten a message a few days prior from this psychic that I saw at a bar that came up to me and said, "Your friend Molly is here and she's telling me to tell you a message." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "She wants you to spend the night. She wants you to stay over." And so the night that she died, her mom came out to me in the hallway and said, "Would you stay over tonight?" And I thought, "Okay, I'm going to stay over." So I spent the night at the hospital. My hand was on her leg and she was sedated and I was fast asleep, and something flicked my finger that I thought was a nurse waking me up to tell me something, and there was nobody in the room, and I woke up and I was actually present for her last 2 breaths. So, I feel like she woke me to tell me it
Yeah.
was time, and so when she passed away, I think I was so blown away by that moment, I wasn't even able to be present for the fact that she had died because I couldn't believe she had communicated with me. So, having gone through that, now it's ignited a fear in me, and it's something that you've been through, which is losing your partner. Like, I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes just to see if my husband is, like, breathing and if he's awake. So, losing her and being so open about my grief has actually triggered my fear of losing my partner, and I don't know, when you tell me that your boyfriend died, it's just that's one of my biggest fears. It's terrifying to me.
Yeah.
How did you get through that? How did you even I can't that feels like a loss that I don't know if I could really handle. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I
Ooh,
believe that too. That I was 26 when it happened, and I didn't think, I was like, there's no possible way I could survive this.
really?
And it just, I mean, it became the biggest thing, and this is a very broad answer, but the biggest thing initially that helped me was my yoga practice,
Really?
the physical practice of yoga, but also I don't know how much you're familiar with yoga, but the other limbs of yoga, which are more like philosophical practices.
Yeah.
For me, that was a huge anchor throughout my grief. But then talking about it and doing, I went to grad school to become a therapist. I work with grief. I've done a lot of things. I was relating to what you were saying earlier about, I've definitely been like, is this self-indulgent?
Right.
Am I talking about this too much? That all of that was for me a progression of learning how to live with the grief.
Yeah, learning how to live with it.
Yeah.
I think people often think, "How do I get back to normal?" One of my dear
Yeah.
friends just lost her father, and I was like, "There's no normal now, there's just the new version of you that exists without."
Yeah.
Really,
Yes.
and so I think living without my father has been hard, without my sweet Molly has been so hard, and I just think I'm so connected and so dependent and so tied to my partner because I don't have any children. He's like, we are I always laugh, I'm like, "We're slightly codependent." Are we? I think we might be. But that's just a big, really, really big fear of mine. So people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, you're so free with death now." And I am, except in that one
That one.
category, which
Yeah.
when you told me that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, there it is, there it is, there it is." So,
Mhm.
as well versed as I am in this, I still have a deep trigger and a deep fear of the loss of
Yeah.
my partner.
Yeah. Well, I think until you've experienced a death, a really significant death, that's only something that happens to other people, right?
Totally.
And then when you experience it, then you're like, "Oh, okay. This does happen to people I know." And then it opens up the possibility, for, of course, other people to die. So I think that it can just make that so much more obvious that someday that will
Yeah,
happen,
I know.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that's gonna happen to all of us, and I love that nobody talks about it.
I
Nobody
know.
talks about,
I
like,
know.
so interesting.
It
Like,
is
it's
so.
literally gonna happen to every single one of us, but we're like, "Oh, that." And I do find comfort in talking about it, like, what does
Yeah.
that look like, and
Mhm.
what does life look like after you or after me or after one of us is gone? And so I find that leaning into conversations and having the uncomfortable conversations somehow takes the tabooness out of it and makes it a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here.
I know.
That's why we're having this conversation.
I know.
Yeah. So, did you say that your dad had died before Molly died?
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad passed away in 2005. Oh my god, it's been 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he's been gone for a long time. But I still feel like there's a picture of him right here next to my desk, and I still feel him sometimes too, less so after so many years, but yeah, losing my dad was whew, that was really tough. That was tough, it's like
Mhm.
your parent, the person that you kind of count on, and losing him at such a young age. In fact, I lost him at he was 50 when he passed, and I just turned 50, and it was a
Mhm.
really people were like, "Oh, you're having a hard time turning 50?" And I'm like, "No, I'm great. I'm happy to be 50. I just can't believe that this is the age that my dad died." It just hit me in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one because yeah, when you're a kid, they're so old, and
Totally.
you can't
Yeah.
comprehend what it's like to be that age. But
Yeah.
yes, now here we are.
Oh,
So,
here we are, exactly.
yeah. So
Oh.
how was as it relates to the grief and how it impacted you, how was the experience of the grief from your dad's death different than the grief from Molly's?
Hmm. My dad's grief was like a who am I without? you kind of grief. Like I didn't know who I was without a dad, right? And he was such a part of my self-confidence and how I viewed love and how I chose men. He really shaped my life. So I kind of and I also didn't know who my mom was without my dad, so it definitely shifted. It was whew, I mean, I still feel the ripple effect of the loss of my dad, but the grief was it's interesting that you I've never talked about this because I always felt like losing my dad felt so devastating, but I always had so much compassion for my mom because I thought, what is it like to lose the person you chose to go through life with and you grew
Mhm.
up with and you made children with? Like, so that goes back to my big fear of losing a partner, right? So,
Yeah.
but I was always super concerned about my mom, but the grief was it was deep, and I was with my dad when he passed away, and I watched him pass, and I watched my mom feel him pass, so I my my grief around my dad is always very much connected to my mother. With Molly, it was just kind of the 2 of us, and it felt different because it felt like I was more mature in my grief. I was, willing to talk about my grief with Molly before she died, where I didn't get to do that with my dad.
That's
Yeah.
an experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Like talking to someone like, "You're dying, and
Yeah.
how is this gonna look, and what do you want it to be like, and are you how are you feeling about it, and what am I gonna do without you?" And
Mm.
I've never experienced actively talking about the grief with the person that you're losing ever.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. How does it feel
Hmm.
for you now that you have had that experience? You like prepared for that in a way as best you could. What do you think that does for you now?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I think it gives me a closeness with her that's kind of out of this world, right? Because
Yeah.
like, being able to go through that with somebody so mindfully and thoughtfully. And also so morbid, like, I look back at my phone sometimes to just review the text messages that we exchanged, and up until I mean, days before she was sedated, and maybe 3 days before she actually passed, we were still exchanging funny, morbid, inappropriate text messages, like, we were being so us all the way until the end, and I she taught me, like, you don't stop living while you're dying. You're still living, right? You're still a person, and I really learned how to see her, how to hear her, how to lean into the uncomfortable. No one had ever given me permission like that to have
Mm.
conversations like that, and she gave me the gift of being able to do that. Yeah, God, I hadn't even really thought about that, but I don't think I've ever done that with anybody, and I don't know if because of the project we were working on, it was so around communication. I don't know if this would ever happen again because it was
Yeah.
such a yeah, right? Like, yeah.
It's again such a unique experience.
I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever put that together until this conversation with you and how
Mm.
honestly, like, deeply unique and weird this is. But
Mm.
she was just that kind of person, like that
Mhm.
she hated small talk. So it makes sense that we were always talking about the deep, uncomfortable, funny, morbid. Like she would she would make jokes and talk about like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to die because 'cause I'm so tired of small talk with people when they come into my room." And she's like, "Can't wait to fucking die. I can't wait to get out of this." I was like, "Molly." She's like, "No, I'm serious. Like, I can't wait."
Sounds like something I would say if I that's true. Right, I can't deal with this small talk here.
"How are you? How's your day? How are your kids?" And I'd be like
Oh.
when we would record the podcast, some doctors would come in, doctors that weren't even her doctor that were just coming to check on her. It was so lovely. But they would come in and they'd be like, "Oh, we're getting ready to take the kids to Tahoe." And Molly was like, "I don't really care. I don't really care."
Oh.
I mean, but she did care 'cause she was such a lovely person, but he'd leave the room and she'd be like, "I'm so glad to die so I don't have to hear about people's family vacation."
I love that.
Isn't
Oh,
she funny? I know.
yes, that's hilarious. Yeah. So in the show, it portrays that like you were with her for a lot of the time and most of the time. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I was very much there and I wasn't at all of her doctor's appointments. I didn't quit my play to be a part, but I did stop my life. Luckily my husband was so incredibly supportive, was just very much like this is where you need to be. So I was there a lot, like a lot. Like So, but was I there for, like, every single doctor's appointment, every single procedure? No, because her mom at that point, she had really reconciled a beautiful relationship with her mom, and her mom was there and really allowed me to kind of touch and go and come in and out, and her mom was there every day and night for 4 months. But I was her touchstone. I was her healthcare proxy. I was the person that helped her make decisions. But so, I mean, the show definitely took some liberties. I wasn't at every single doctor's appointment, but there were quite a few. I mean, there were quite a few where we were together, but it was really hard for me to balance also living my life. I had to work. I had two stepdaughters that were young, that I had 50% of the time. I had a husband, I had a dog, I had just life. And I think I did as good of a job as I could have at trying to balance taking care of that, but also being her ride or die. So it was accurate. It wasn't exact, but I was there for a lot of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
I'd
a lot.
never
I mean,
done that. I'd never
yeah.
done that before.
Yeah, well, I don't know that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Some have, but not also unique experience, but
I know. It's
so
so
then
funny. I don't think I've realized how unique this and talking to you is like, I'm, kind of blowing I'm just like, wow. Yeah, very unique.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sometimes you just go through life and you just, like, put one foot in front of the other and you just do what you're supposed to do, and you
Well,
don't really
yeah,
look back,
well,
you know?
and what our life is what's normal to us, right? So we just know, well,
Totally.
this is how my life is.
And she was very vocal about how she wanted me there and what she wanted me there for, and she was very understanding when I couldn't be there, but if it were up to her, like, I'm a pretty private person. It You would never guess that. You would never get but, like, when I'm grieving or I'm sad or I'm going through something, I wanna be alone.
Mhm,
Molly wanted to be with me when she
mm,
was feeling those ways,
mhm.
and so I just honored that, and my husband really helped me, like, show up. I was gone. I was MIA for about 3.5 months. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
and I
then
loved it. Yeah.
for back to my original question and and what my initial interest in this was, like, what next? Like, when she died in that immediate aftermath, what was that like for you?
I had mentioned that I couldn't be very super present for the fact that she
Yeah.
had just died, right? Like, she was gone. But because I had felt her come to me and tap my fingers and wake me up, I think I was so enamored by what had just happened spiritually that I was just like I was I don't know if I was as present for her death as I would have been if that wouldn't have happened, and I think she kind of did that on purpose for me so that she could be like, "Look, I'm here. I'm navigating this," because
Mm,
she navigated her own death. She said, "I want my mom in the room. I want her to be there with me, but I want her resting, and I want you to be with me when I take my last breath." And I thought, "Well, that's some storybook ending. How is that ever gonna happen?" And I woke up after the tapping of the fingers, and I put my hand on her head and my hand on her chest, and I just was there, and I said, "I'm right here. I got you." So that's exactly what happens in the TV show. And she took her last 2 breaths, and I just think I was so blown away by her communicating with me that I don't think I realized she was gone until I woke up the next morning,
mhm, mhm.
because I was so enamored by how did she do that? How did she wake me up and tell me that? Like, and it
Yeah,
was a hard tapping of the fingers, like something was underneath my fingers tapping them to wake me up.
yeah. It makes me think, I don't know if this is true or not, but it makes me think of, like, if you were maybe in relationship with her in a different way in that way, because she was no longer physically alive, and you know what the energy is between you 2 when you're
Yeah,
both physically alive, you know what that feels like, but and this
yeah.
was different. And if
Sure.
that was experienced in a different way.
It feels like it was, but when now that you're making me track my memory, and I remember staying with her body for a long time, and she was very clear with me, "Please do not let me die with my mouth open." And that was in the TV show as
Yeah.
well, and I said and she's like, "I don't wanna die with my hands like this and my mouth open," and I was like, "First of all, I don't think anybody dies with pterodactyl hands, but I will make sure that you don't." But her mouth wouldn't close because, the body takes a while for things to set in, and her relaxed state of her mouth was open, and I just kept remembering every hour that passed, I'd go back and try to do that for her, and then
Mm,
finally, after the 4th hour of sitting with her and waiting for them to come get her body, her mouth, I pushed up her jaw and closed her mouth, and I was like, "Oh, there we go. Okay, I got
mm,
you." So, we were it's so funny you said that, like, we were still in relationship
yeah.
together even after she died. Oh, it makes me so emotional because, like, I feel like in a way we're still doing that now.
You are in a way. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. In a pretty big way. Mm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So, yeah, those are really beautiful questions you're asking me because it the grief was so different than I think
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
normal grief is. I
yeah,
don't know what normal grief is, who knows, but you know what I mean.
yeah. So when that you said maybe it wasn't until the next day or something when it hit you, what had happened?
I don't really remember driving home from the hospital. It was I think the sun was coming up. No, it was still dark. It was pretty late. It's like 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and I just came into the house, and my husband put me into bed, and I just slept for hours, and I remember waking up and thinking, "What do I do?" Like, "What do I do now? She's gone. She's not in that room," which I got so used to her being in
Yeah,
that room for months on end. I'd walk in, that's where she'd be sitting. She didn't leave that room for almost 3.5 months, so it became our spot to connect, and I thought, "What am I gonna do without her?" And there was a little bit of relief too. I felt relieved that she was done suffering and that I was done driving to a hospital 4 times a week. I was there was a relief of the release that happened as
yeah,
well, for sure.
yeah,
And people don't talk about that because they it makes them feel guilty, but there's always a relief when someone you walk somebody through their death, and I think there's always a bit of a relief of the suffering ending and the
yeah,
that part of it being over.
yeah, yeah. That's a very natural part of it, but it is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I mean, being that this is a TV show and kind of very quickly seen in that way, I would imagine that you get a lot of questions about Molly and
Yeah.
your experience. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I get the most thought it's interesting when you put something out there, you have to be prepared for the negativity and the hate and the I have to say, Laura, I have not experienced maybe a percent of that.
Yeah,
Everything I'm getting is just gratitude, people in the cancer community that are like, "Thank you for showing a real depiction of who we are and what we're going through," and even though that's not my story, it opens up a conversation about my story, and people are resonating with it really deeply, so I get hundreds of messages on Instagram, and I have actually made some sweet relationships with people because there's just a real confiding. I think I feel connected to them because they're opening up to me because of Molly and they feel a connection and a safety with me. So that has been just crazy cool and really wonderful connecting with people, but tons of questions and tons of sharing. Like, I've gone through something similar. Here's my story. And I just
yeah,
love that. I love that.
yeah, yeah. There's beauty in it for sure.
Yeah.
Again, yours is such a unique experience in that there's a TV show around this, and her story and your story in a lot of ways are very well known. And I would assume that just having that exist naturally comes with a lot of ways in which that impacts your life, right? And
Right.
but if there's a way to weed that out, which maybe there's not, but I'm curious how grief and your experience with death changed your life.
Mm. Mm. Well, I cry all the time. Like interviews, I did a Disney panel with the entire cast and just cried on stage. I think I'm really open to sharing my grief, and I think it's changed me because it has shedded some of the shame that I
Mm,
have around grief and trauma and stories and failures, and I think it's just kind of caused me to be more she is her passing and this experience has caused me to be more to be less withholding, to be less egocentric, like, "Oh, how is this gonna look if I tell somebody this?" I kinda give less Fs all the like, I just don't care anymore. It's so freeing to not care if someone likes you or if it makes them uncomfortable or if like, it's so nice to not and some of that comes with age, but I do think I went through a bit of a boot camp, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And I think it's just really changed how I connect with people and how I kinda like to go straight to the center of a juicy conversation, like, avoiding the small talk like we'd mentioned earlier. I think it's really changed how I show up for life, really going through this
Yeah.
death with her, how
I'm
I
sure it
show up
has.
for life. And I'm still type A, I still stress out about stupid stuff. I still get really annoyed when the kitchen sink isn't clean. I still am an idiot. Like I still am an idiot. But the the tool to which I measure my stupidness, I've softened it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm softening the edges of, like, how hard I am on myself and
Mhm.
honestly how hard I am on other people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I
Uh,
used to be, like, slightly judgy and being like, "Why are they doing it that way?" And I'm like, "They're just doing it the best way they can."
Yes.
So, it's changed me in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. What about
Yeah.
you?
Same. I use that term softening the edges a lot
Oh,
too. I
really?
like
Oh,
that. Yeah.
oh,
Very similar to what you said in that it has just broadened my perspective on pretty much everything. I think I used to be a little somewhat judgy too. Part of that was probably because I was in my 20s and I thought I knew everything about the world, but I did not. But just had such a limited way of looking at things and
mhm,
understanding things and not really being interested in or having any
mhm.
inclination to look outside of that until I was forced to, until this death
Yeah,
happened. And I had no belief system around death. I wasn't raised with religion or anything like that. And all of a sudden I'm like, but where are they? And I
right,
had to like come to terms with that. So just with that came not only the coming to terms with death and trying to understand things in a different way, but that applies for me at least has applied to all areas
right,
of life of just being more open-minded and knowing that as we were pointing to earlier now death has happened to me so I know it's going to happen again and Satan doesn't mean I don't get annoyed with or wrapped up in the things of being human like of course I do but I also overall I think have that broader understanding of this could be it I could die
yeah.
tomorrow or this other person who I love could die tomorrow it can change quickly.
Very quickly. I don't know how your deaths have happened in your life, if they've been slow or like a phone call that you get saying someone's gone, and the I've been fortunate enough to be able to walk people home
Hmm.
with time, and except for my uncle who I'm not laughing, it's not funny. My uncle that died of a heart attack at a family event. None of that's funny, but what's funny is that I tried to resuscitate him with CPR, and, of course, it didn't work because he was already gone, but my family joke is like, "You're if you die, just make sure Nikki's not around because she sucks at CPR." Like, my family makes fun we have this morbid joke of like, "Oh my gosh, hope you don't die when Nikki's around because CPR is not so great," and I was like, "Screw you, I tried." But that's why I laugh when I talk about my uncle's passing, but
Yeah.
that was so abrupt and so fast that I didn't get to process any of it, so I often think about deaths in 2 categories, which is the opportunity to really be mindful and thoughtful and visit and have time versus getting a phone call, and I'm just
Yeah.
curious how the passings were in your life, and did you get to experience? Because that affects your grief, I believe.
It does, yeah. Mine were both sudden. They were the phone call. So, yeah, it's a totally different experience in that you don't have and I don't think one's b better or worse or easier or harder than the other, but they're just different experiences. In that one moment, they were there, and the next moment, they weren't.
Yeah, that's also a fear. So thanks for bringing that
Mhm.
up. No, I'm just
Bringing out your worst fears.
no, this is good. I think this is kinda technically, I think, a therapy session for me,
Yeah,
so I think
well,
I owe you money at the end of this call.
I'll send you a bill.
Yeah, right. Oh my god.
Oh, well, funny. Yeah, well, this therapy session could keep going for a long time,
I
but
honestly could talk to you forever. You're just like such a safe space to be in, and you've allowed me to think of things
mm,
that I haven't really put together. So this has been really nice. Yeah.
oh, well, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your experience. Is there anything else, though, that we haven't or that you haven't said yet that still feels important to say?
I think in the midst of all this, there's so many wonderful things happening. Like I've created new friendships with people. I had an amazing time creating a television show and a podcast. And so Molly said to me so beautifully as she was going through her last few weeks of life, she said, I hope somehow I've watched you work so hard in your whole life. And I hope somehow that my death can make your life easier. And she's just given me this amazing opportunity to figure out who I am as a woman, a person, and also as an artist and a creator. And I've never felt more purposeful in my life. And so she really gave me that gift. And I think she was slightly aware of it. I don't know if she understood how beautiful and big this was going to be, but as I go to the Emmy Awards and as I do all these beautiful events and get dressed up and get to be on the red carpet and do all of this, she is so with me, and I am so aware that she is my North Star in all of this. So I
Mm-hmm.
just felt like I wanted to say that because this is so amazing, but I'm so fully aware that none of this would be happening without her beauty in my life. And so I'm just so
Mm-hmm.
grateful to her.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking.
Yes. I think that oftentimes points to that duality of grief and sadness and beauty and all of the almost like magic and transformation that can come with an experience like yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's also one other thing I'd like to express is
Yeah.
that I don't think I loved her as much as I do now. And I had that love grow
Mm,
for her after she was gone. And so you can deepen your connection and your love to somebody after they are gone. And I
mm.
never thought that was possible. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
That's great. I've had that experience, but I love that you named that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I've loved getting to interact with you and hearing more of your story. So thank
I
you.
know this has been so healing and so nice. And thanks for having me on your show. It's been
Mm.
really kind of special because I haven't really talked like this for this amount of time with somebody. So, except for my therapist. But I mean it, like, this has been really, really profound, so thank you for
Yeah,
having me on the show.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with me, Laura Walton, and my incredible guest on Grief on Purpose. Your presence is a gift, and I'm so grateful you're walking this path with us. For more connection and resources, you'll find everything you need in the show description. To my guests, thank you for sharing your person with us today. It is truly an honor to know your story. I'm your host, Laura Walton. Until next time, be kind to yourself and remember you're not alone in your grief. We are here on purpose.